Welcome to VSP News from Coleman's Corner. I am your host, David A. Coleman, the editor of Fleet Maintenance Magazine. It is the only publication that is all maintenance, all management, all vehicle classes, all the time. You know, in today's business climate, fleets are looking for ways to improve equipment reliability, increase vehicle uptime, and decrease operating costs. Now, among the ways to do this is to move from manually greasing vehicle chassis and chassis-mounted equipment to using a centralized lubrication system. To get some specifics about this, I visited with Gary Picard, a national accounts manager for Interlube Systems. It's a company that makes and markets automated lubrication delivery systems and related components.
If you think about what the reason you do the greasing of the truck is to purge out contaminants out of the bushing points and also to take and put fresh grease in. If you do that on a rack, the grease is at its highest lubricity point when it goes off the rack. From that point, as it moves down the highway, it starts losing that lubricating quality of the grease, no matter what the quality of the grease is. If you do that once every 5,000 miles, 10,000 miles, once a month, what you're doing is allowing the grease to deteriorate to a point where the contaminants can come into that lube point and start eroding at the life of the component itself. So, if you do it more often with smaller amounts, you actually are more effective in making the life of that component longer.
How does a centralized lubrication system function? Picard explains.
If you look at a centralized lube system, what you're doing is you have a reservoir on board of the vehicle that has fresh grease in it all the time. This system will now present directly to each one of the lube components, the components that require lubrication, grease without any break in the connection between them. So the fresh grease goes directly from the reservoir to the component. What you're going to gain is you're going to gain a constant pulse of lubricant in there that will keep the contaminants from getting in, so that instead of every month or 5,000 miles or 10,000 miles, it's going to be now every hour it's going to get a fresh shot of grease. The other thing also is you're not going to over lubricate because you don't have to push a lot of stuff out. You just have to keep replenishing the grease that has been consumed, the qualities of the grease that have been consumed to do the job. And that's how you get longer life. You're also going to reduce the amount of lubricant you use and doing this process, because if you go back to when you manually greased, you pumped the grease in until it came out and then wiped it off. Now you want to see a little dampness around that joint.
Chassis-mounted lube systems also save maintenance time.
You now reduce your hours in your shop for PM process. And then if you look at a truck with 30 points on it, a proper way to do it is going to take you almost an hour. 30 points, 2 minutes a point, 60 minutes. If you look at a fleet of 100 trucks, you're looking at 1,200 hours a year if he's bringing it in once a month. Okay, what can you do with 1,200 shop hours that you didn't have before?
While centralized lubrication systems work automatically, they still need to be maintained.
An automatic system still needs to have maintenance. You still need to take and look at the system to make sure all the lines are intact. You still have to make sure that the system does function. You still need to take and make sure there's grease in the reservoir. But now, instead of spending an hour doing the greasing of that truck properly, it's now a 5-minute process by pushing a manual run button and by taking and just walking around looking at the lube points to make sure they have a little bit of dampness around them, and also making sure that the reservoir is full of grease and the system is working.
Additional information on centralized lubrication systems and on Interlube can be found by visiting Fleet Maintenance Magazine online. Thank you for tuning in to VSP News from Coleman's Corner. I am your host, David A. Coleman, the editor of Fleet Maintenance Magazine, the only publication that is all maintenance, all management, all vehicle classes, all the time. Until our next broadcast, you can keep up with what is happening in our industry by visiting Fleet Maintenance Magazine online.